We'll call to order the special called workshop to discuss and consider special purpose local option sales tax referendum to be held November 4, 2014. I guess we'll just get right into it, Kenny.
Okay. I apologize for the 15-minute delay, but we wanted to be absolutely sure, since this was not a regularly scheduled meeting, that we gave ample 24 hours notice for everybody to know that we were here this morning. We've talked a good bit about SPLOST, or we have, over the last several weeks. As you know, we met with the county on Thursday, June 26th, with Orchard Hill, Sunnyside County Commissioners. Mr. Wilson has projected that the SPLOST, a 6-year SPLOST with an intergovernmental agreement with the municipalities, would bring in about $50,400,000. At that meeting on the 26th, the city of Orchard Hill requested $500,000. The city of Sunnyside requested $346,430,000, and our request at that point was $22,344. $22,344,000 with 3 zeros at the end. Thank you. Leaves a balance of $27,209,570. The county subsequently did not get into a lot of detail at that meeting, but afterwards they had an additional meeting and suggested some level 2 projects, which included upgrades to their computer-aided dispatch of $1 million, lighting soccer fields at Matthias Park at $400,000, animal shelter funds in the amount of $1 million, and an aquatic center funding in the amount of $2 million, totaling $4,400,000 level 2 projects. Subsequently to that, Chairman McLemore sent a request to Mr. Wilson discussing the possibility of meeting the needs of the municipalities and the county, just keeping the remaining funds and not calling those $4,400,000 level 2 projects as countywide projects, but just simply county projects. So I guess what we need to do this morning is try to finalize our request so we can get the information to Spalding County as to what our final numbers are, what our final request might be, what projects we would want to bond to go ahead and get out of the way, and how to proceed from here. Our original request was for general fund debt service payoff, one Griffin Center, and some fire department equipment. Additionally, we had requested a replacement for our fire headquarters building, which is currently located on North Expressway. We estimated $3,750,000 there. The remodeling and repurposing of the historic City Hall was about $4 million. Substandard structure and blight abatement, $3 million. And the remainder of our request would be transportation funding, $8,050,000 for milling and resurfacing streets, sidewalks, and intersection improvements, specifically to our famous intersection at Solomon, Searcy, and High Falls. All of these requests are pretty close to cost estimates that we have received in the past. I guess the first point of discussion could be the debt service payoff, and Mr. Schwab is here if we need additional information on specifics about that. We will have a balloon note coming due in November of 2016 on this building, which is slightly less than $3 million, depending on when we pay that off, based on if we bond that after when and after the SPLOST passes, if we were to bond that. And I think I gave you the information on the current interest rates that we have on that note. Depending on when we bond that, obviously will depend on how much the principal is at that time. We're looking at if we just look at that balloon note when it is due in 2016, we're looking at $2.6 million. Of course, if we were to pay it off early, go ahead and bond it after the SPLOST passes and those proceeds start to accumulate enough to make the bond payment, it might be slightly higher than that depending on the timing issue of paying that off. But it appears that it would be right around $3 million or possibly a little less. Now, the fire suppression equipment, a rescue unit, and a ladder truck is on a GMA lease program, and that interest rate right now is right around 2%. So I don't know if that would really be worth, paying that off when we've already got it under a lease purchase agreement with GMA at 2%. Really wouldn't be worth the refinancing costs, I don't think, to do that. So, that's an option that we have before us. But based on the interest rate that we currently have on that balloon note, and we've got some options on that balloon note when it comes due. We can refinance it, hopefully. I don't think the interest rate would probably at that time be equivalent to what we could get now through some bonding to pay it off early. Without refinancing it, it might be kind of a strain to come up with that $2.6 million all at one time to pay it off in November of 2016. So staff's recommendation would be that seriously needs to be considered as a bonded project so we could go ahead and pay off that note. The fire department new headquarters, as you know, we've talked about that. That building is quite old. Its location is not ideal. We do have some pretty good estimates on a new facility, around $3.5 million. As you know, when we first talked about a facility, we were trying to locate it in conjunction with the UGA campus and had even asked them for some land on that corner. We did get a letter of rejection to that idea, so we would have to purchase some land, and land in that corridor is fairly expensive, so we really don't know how much. We have looked at some estimates of where we'd like to put it. We've looked at least what the tax assessors has for some values in that corridor, and we're probably looking at least $200,000 to $300,000. So that's why we put the $3,750,000, 3.5 for the building itself, and another $250,000 for the land. That is a project that staff would like to highly recommend that we bond also. If we put that as a pay-as-you-go project, we'd probably be looking at 6 years or longer before we walked in the door of that building. It's taken us about 18 months to get to the point where we're putting approval of the electric facility on the agenda tonight. It'll be another 12 to 16 months to build that building. So you're looking at 2 years to actually, once you bid it out and everything that goes with the building. So if we wait till we have the money and then coordinate all that, you're probably looking at 5 to 6 years before we actually have that building. I guess selfishly, there are a couple of projects here I'd like to see in my lifetime, so that being one of them. So the longer we put it off, the chances of that happening are kind of slim. Hopefully I'll be here 6 years from now. But that's a project that the staff, if we're going to bond projects, would strongly recommend. The historic City Hall is another one that the staff strongly recommends that we bond in the amount of $4 million. We have an estimate from local architects that estimate 3.9. To me, that's a little high, but they know a lot more about it than I do. But that's just for that building. Of course, the roof, the asbestos, the lead base, and then repurposing the inside of that building. And then that estimate only includes the property directly adjacent to that building, not all the old other City Hall property. That estimate only includes the property, parking, or whatever it would take right around that building. Again, as you know, that building's in very bad shape. If we waited as a pay-as-you-go project on that, again, I think we'd be looking at, 4 to 6 years before we could actually do anything with that building. If we're going to bond some projects anyway, staff would strongly recommend that we bond that one as well. The substandard abatement, we do that on an annual basis anyway. If we got $500,000 a year, that would keep staff very, very, very busy to spend $500,000 a year. So that's a pretty liberal amount. If we could get that, rather than just nuisance abatement and demo property, we could probably use some of those funds to actually buy some of the property up as well, in addition to abating it, so we could actually develop some property. But $500,000 a year is probably the max that staff could actually logistically work on through our legal system and through our court system and through our abatement process. Transportation, certainly a pay-as-you-go project. We would just do so much per year. After we made our bond payments, whatever monies were available with substandard housing and transportation, we have estimated to resurface about 30 miles of streets, 5 miles of sidewalks, and the $2.5 million for the intersection is, an estimate. Dr. Keller came up with that, and I would imagine it's pretty close, but it hasn't been engineered, so, we don't know. That's a ballpark figure. I gave you the information on the bonding cost. If we bonded those 3 projects, I put that in your packet. We would be looking at paying interest on that money for about a 6-year period in the amount of $637,000. There would be about $231,000 worth of issuance cost. So those funds would have to come out of our $22 million that we've asked for, and I feel pretty confident that we would be able to do that, especially if we trimmed off that fire apparatus payment. That would cut it down some, and then depending on how the other projects came out, I think we would be able to make that interest payment. And staff feels like it would be worthwhile to go ahead and bond those projects, even though we would have to pay that interest and issuance cost to go ahead and get them moving. We're looking at the SPLOST being effective March 1st of 15.
We're going to ask that it not cease. We're going to ask Department of Revenue that they allow us not to let it cease and spending money.
Worst case scenario, it would be March 1st, and yes, it would be April before we actually saw any collections, worst case scenario. So you're still looking at, 10 months from now, possibly, before you see the money, maybe 7 or 8 if it works out.
A question
Yes, ma'am.
about the City Hall, the historic City Hall. I know before when we were talking about getting monies or trying to get grants and stuff, that we were required to continue to keep that building. Are you saying that it would be just as cheap or efficient to build around that building? Because what I'm thinking you're saying is that we're going to gut that building pretty much and redo the outside structure. And that's going to cost us almost $4 million, right? That's what you're saying. Now, what are you saying?
If I understand your question correctly, the $4 million would include a roof. It would include asbestos abatement. It would include lead-based paint abatement. And it would include whatever you do on the inside to reconfigure, shore it up and reconfigure it. Because it's been leaking for so long, there's probably some floor damage, and we don't know what all damage there is to it. So we wouldn't necessarily gut the inside of it, but it depended on how we repurposed it. as to how we would need to go in and reconfigure the inside after we
But the
shored it
question
up.
I'm asking is, to me, it seemed like it would be just as efficient to build a whole new building than to pay that amount to repurpose it. I could be wrong, I'm not.
I don't imagine we could build a building of that stature with $4 million. If we just demolished it and built a new building, I don't think we could do that for $4 million.
My question is, how much bonded debt do we already have
General fund?
in every area?
Oh, well, if you look at revenue bonds from the water, 50, 60 million.
Well, these bonds are backed by the SPOS money, so they're specific.
And that's the point I was gonna raise. I think we'd have to call for and have a separate ballot just within the city on whether to issue general obligation bonds to be repaid primarily through SPOS. Because the way I understand the law would have to work.
Right.
Now, if the county was going to bond projects, you could actually bond the city's projects as well, but if you're not bonding any of them, the city's gonna have to have a separate vote just amongst its own electorate.
And the county board did vote not to bond the
So it couldn't be included in with the SPOS question.
Well,
It
the
would be a
SPOS
separate-
vote is on, the taxpayers of Spalding County approving the SPOS.
Right, not how
Our
we
vote
do
would be
it.
a separate vote to issue GO bonds to be primarily repaid by our receipt of SPOS proceeds for those projects. But if that fell
City
short,
electric-
then you would have to, fall back on tax funds.
City electorate only would vote.
Right, and in relation to this, anytime we go in debt, whether you've got SPOS funds or not, the debt has to be paid. Is that not correct?
Oh, yeah.
Your other bonds, for the most part, are all revenue bonds. They're paid by the dedicated revenues of the projects for which they
Yeah.
were issued, for which the improvements were made. And this would be true general obligation debt, similar to the current financing on this building. It can
But
be tried
The
to
savings on the
prepay.
interest by bonding it would be significant. We would,
For this building, you mean?
well, now we're paying an interest for this building, you could do all the projects for less on interest than we're paying for this building, and
Yeah, I mean, depending on,
Based
if
on
we
your-
refinanced it November of 2016, depending on what the rate is at that time, it could be better, could be worse.
I mean, the next available vote,
You would do a bond issue with a not-to-exceed rate. Now, right now, you could probably issue it for a little under 3, I think, where it's added, William, I think you
this
checked
is
recently.
showing,
But that could vary, depending on where the economy is in the next 2 years.
well, it's 7% or whatever it is in this building at the moment. But you're showing on this one spreadsheet here that's 1.88%. Based on the current rates.
Yeah, the spreadsheet from Raymond James, I think he assumed 2% for issuance costs.
So once the SPOS vote happens, the next election that we could have for a bond
Well,
following
you
the
probably
SPOS
want to vote them at
would
the
be
same
March.
time, Doug. I think you would probably stand the better chance of everything passing if you had it all before the voters at the same opportunity.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, if we don't bond these and you let the historic building down there deteriorate, you're losing money. And if you don't go on and do the fire station, the same thing, costs go up.
Costs go up on everything.
So bonding it saves money, in my opinion. I'll say this, I think these are the general projects we've talked about. I think the plan's a good one. I could walk out here right now, accept that and be happy, unless somebody else got the
Good to
issue.
go. Make it
I'm
happen.
happy with it.
When do we do the vote, today or tonight?
All right, go ahead. Do you have the total bonded debt, Marcus?
Total debt is roughly $64 million remaining.
I hope so.
What's the general fund debt?
The general fund is just that, is the GMA lease for the $500,000 for the fire suppression, and the other components there. It's really not that much that's left.
about $3.4 million in general fund.
Bonded debt, that's the notes with the GMA, and then you've got that $3 point something million outstanding on the building, where you have $500,000 on taxable, and then the tax exempt side.
Question.
That's outstanding.
And other than the fire suppression, we've got any police cars,
No,
tractors?
For the last several years, we've gone
Cash
to a
flow.
cash basis for any vehicles, basically trucks, pickups, cars. We're paying them for cash.
any landfill equipment or anything we've got?
We did purchase some landfill equipment, some,
And I think we've got 3 more
refuse
units
haulers.
that are about to come up on the landfill too, off Caterpillar.
I'm sorry, say again?
Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
some basically lease purchase equipment through Caterpillar.
But the rates are so low,
Yeah, I mean, well, that's not we don't want to pay that off and own that equipment, because it's an all-inclusive lease that covers maintenance and everything on that large equipment, so that, we don't want to pay that off.
Right, and so, in other words, let's vote on what we want on our SPLOST. We'll worry about the bonded, if we can go ahead and put that as a separate issue. But, like, if we pay off debt on One Griffin Center, which I think we should, I'm embarrassed that we haven't already, but
Well, I mean, it hadn't been due yet. I mean,
Well,
we're
I
making
understand it
payments.
hasn't been due, but we've been in it, what, 8 years?
And we've been making annual payment, or semi-annual payments on it as you go. This is just the balloon that's coming up in November 2016.
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I like the projects. I'm not sure that the order of them is how I would like it. I think that for the taxpayers, they see evidence when we do our milling and our paving of our streets and things like that, and they see evidence that we really are trying to improve our community with our substandard abatement and our blight abatement. But I'm with Mr. Marr here. I'm happy with the projects as we have them, and I'm ready to vote for them.
If you bond these projects, though, you can immediately go into substandard and milling of streets and doing those improvements right as the cash starts flowing in.
As long as that's pay-as-you-go money, you can.
Right,
Start those right
exactly.
away.
So we can
Thank you,
we
Drew.
could actually do everything immediately.
Let
And
me
this
ask
would be a
William a
6-year
question on timing.
It's a 6-year spot.
Yeah.
So that means.
Plus we get the pool, we get
$3
the
million
soccer
on
lights,
stuff
we
you
got
gotta
the
have.
CAD, we get, I mean, I think as a whole, the community will,
Your next meeting's on the 25th. Does that still give us
22nd.
time to call
Ours
for?
is the 22nd.
22nd.
22nd, okay. Does that still give us time to call for a referendum
Yes.
with the Board of
Our
Elections?
meeting is on the 21st, but we would love to, be able to have an agreement, intergovernmental agreement to vote on the 21st, and y'all vote on the 22nd.
Could we put something together to vote on tonight?
Well, I don't know, we need to
I
vote
mean,
tonight.
just on
Yeah.
officially
I think
the projects to send to them so they can manipulate all the work.
Yeah, you could do that.
Boy, neutral from actually,
Right.
last time.
Yeah.
And if I just tell them the projects and the vision, he's good to go.
Well, I'm good to go with this. I don't know.
Let's make it happen. Anybody not good to go?
I'm good.
I think we're good to go, as
Okay, so
presented.
you want to vote on it tonight in
We
some
can vote on that
form
tonight.
of a
and then
Amend the
resolution?
agenda so we can.
Send it to them
I
and
think
then
your
they...
vote tonight would be to transmit to the county the request that the SPLOST include these city projects and the estimated amounts of those. And that's all you need at this point. And then come back at the 22nd meeting and vote on
Right, with the
both the
intergovernmental.
IGA and calling
Right.
of a referendum.
The Ryan plan, where
Yeah, I was gonna get in next.
The Ryan plan.
You're gonna balance the budget?
Give the rest of the money.
Right, we are definitely
Is
doing the
everybody okay
Ryan
with having
plan.
those, just let them have the remainder and designate them county,
Yes.
and we'll move on?
And these are we agree to the countywide.
No, we won't have any say
They
so.
won't
with
be
it.
joint, they'll just be
They'll be
county
county
projects.
projects.
And if
They'll
there's
just
a-
have that money, the
if
remainder of the money.
money exceeds to $50,400,000, are we splitting it 50/50 beyond that, or?
I have a concern about that. Okay. We're saying that these are countywide projects. We kind of agreed to let them have the money because
We're saying they're county projects.
they're county
They're
projects.
not getting into the countywide stuff.
Okay, so
So they do,
I would really myself like to see these as countywide projects, but do we have any kind of assurance that this money for the aquatic center, animal shelter, will actually be? Are we guaranteed that that will be part of the?
Well, the county's telling us that's what'll be identified on the ballot as their projects.
they are the service provider for that.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm saying is we're saying that this is what we'll accept, and whatever other monies, we agree to let them take it, but,
That's the list they proposed, so I'm
Okay.
saying that's what they're going with.
and this is not gonna change. This is definitely what y'all are taking to your voter, to us, countywide.
That's what they have voted on at the previous meeting.
So, I mean,
I
why
mean,
would
they
you
could
change?
come back and change it at any point.
That's what I'm
By
saying.
the time they vote on it on July 21st, but as of right now, that's their proposed project, the way I understand it.
And
I
money,
guess we have to, I think we need to take them at their word, so.
the money beyond
Yeah.
$50,400,000, will we split that 50/50, or what's the plan on? If the economy goes absolutely crazy and things start happening with new buildings being built?
We don't have no say.
I don't think it's on the table, is it?
And we won't have to worry about operation costs like we did 800.
I just want to make sure they don't do it.
I don't have a copy of the
We didn't reach that 100% mark, though. We were below level.
I was just going to use this.
Right,
I believe it did say 50/50,
okay.
but I'm not sure.
Well, you would think it would be the same percentage because of Sunnyside, North
Okay.
Hill, were they not part of that?
They probably, the best way to handle it.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Make sure.
But if that idea was put in there, since we're,
They can, but we're not worried.
since our share is roughly 40%, 42%, 22,344. Do the math real quick.
All right,
22,344, 000, divided by 50 million, 423.
How you doing down there?
So .4433, so something like that. So if that was built into the formula, if the money does go in, intergovernmental agreement where everybody would get their percentage based on that if it exceeds the 50,400,000. Sound good to y'all? Because I'm optimistic things are going to go crazy very soon.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at a 6-year period, it
Right, I
very
mean,
well
over
could
6
be.
years,
You very well
I
could,
mean, we'll be having a
because you're talking about
second term of,
6.5 years from now.
by then, John Kasich will be running his second term for president for re-election, and life will be good in America.
Or Hillary?
are we through with our
Do
business?
you have any?
We're going far afield.
I am.
Cynthia, are you okay with?
Yeah.
what you're-
Yeah,
Okay, I think we're good to go then, if I got nothing else.
All right.
good.
Would you, sure, come on up.
Gwen Flowers Taylor, 134 Spalding Street. In reference to you guys saying, are these numbers correct? I really personally don't understand, why it's not going to be a level 2 countywide project, and maybe somebody can explain it to me, rather than a county project, which I don't have a problem with that, because I'm sure that the intergovernmental agreement will stipulate that maintenance and operation of any projects that are, meet our negotiations for 489 are going to stipulate that we operate and run these places. However, it has come to the attention, to my attention, that the numbers that we put out when we were discussing when I say we, our board was discussing the numbers for the pool and for the animal shelter were not engineered numbers. And I took the liberty of asking the city manager to have Mr. Keller to give us some numbers on what the actual cost of a facility would be. The present pool that you guys have, even with that construction and a covering, according to Mr. Keller, would be about $1.8 million in change, which my motion was that we, even before I even knew that, was $2 million. That doesn't cover parking lot, that doesn't cover solar panels, that doesn't actually cover making it an 8-lane pool, which was the suggestion in order for the community to be able to host other events to come in here. So, you know, I don't understand how this works exactly, but I feel like we probably have underestimated what it would really cost for us to do what we need to do. I spoke with some commissioners in Harris County, and they built a facility which is pretty much a replica of what our initial dream facility was going to be. That construction was completed in 2012 at $7 million, which included 2 gyms, a swimming facility with 8 pools, an outside splash pool area, and a couple of offices. And so we're not even asking for that. We're just asking for a facility that would be heated in the winter, and then some accessibility for maybe a splash pool outside. So I really hope that you guys would not be opposed to the possibility of us having to add more funds on the front side so that we can have a facility that will be not just what we have on the ground now, but something that we can live with and that our population can live with for the next, hopefully we'll do something different before 20 years, but I think that other pool's been here at least 20 years. So when you ask the question, you know, is everything a go? It really isn't, because and I don't want you guys to be out of the loop on understanding that what you agreed to was that we would create a facility that would accommodate what our wishes were. That's just a swimming pool area. So does anybody have any questions?
Okay. Thank you.
This looks like my calculations quickly would leave the county about $27,200,000. So I don't think it would matter to us if the pool, instead of $2 million, was 2.5 or 3 million or whatever. Or it would just, I guess, come off of what your balance is going to be in transportation after those things come off the top. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
For the most part?
The way they voted prioritizing, the priority number 1 was add phone systems, number 2 was starlights, number 3 was animal control facility, number 4 was swim center, number 5 was debt service, and number 6 is transportation. So if my board chose to alter any of those numbers, it would fit that.
So it would basically come off the transportation at the bottom. So we realize those are estimates
And then the
I don't think
44,
it matters.
and the way you're going to disperse the SPOS will be immediately, we'll start dispersing it on a prorated basis to each account.
I believe that in the, much like we did in this past agreement, that once the proceeds come in, since we're not bonding, but you are, that, I don't know how tricky that's going to get, Drew, with that. But when the bond issue is part of the SPLOST, the debt service has to be paid first. So however many months' worth of collections, currently it's about 5 or 6 months' worth of collections each year is set aside for that debt service. I don't know how it works when a separate issue, that's something new, but I would think that the distribution will be based on percentages for Sunnyside, Orchard Hills,
Just
Baldwin
everything
County,
will just slowly
like
go
we
out.
have now with separate accounts going into each.
It's fine.
All right. That wrap it up, Kenny? Anything else? Okay. Well, if there's nothing else,
Congratulations.
then we will move forward with
Yeah.
that.
All right,
Adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Got a motion? Got a second?
I'll get some coffee.
And